The first time I read those messages aloud, I wasn't in my kitchen. No, I was standing under the harsh yellow lights of the VFW hall in Cedar Rapids, holding a manila folder in front of my wife's entire family. The room smelled of stale coffee and cheap beer. A birthday banner for my mother-in-law hung limply above the dance floor. Folding chairs creaked as people shifted, and somewhere off to the side, a kid dropped a plastic fork. There I was, a 58-year-old HVAC guy, reading aloud, "I can't stop thinking about last Friday in your car. I miss your smile more than I should." The room was silent. Emily stared at me, eyes wide, like I'd just torn the roof off the building. Her coworker, James Jensen, looked like he was trying to melt into his chair. Every eye in the room shot back and forth between me and them, never settling. That night, everything spilled out. But it all began 2 weeks earlier, on a Tuesday in our cramped kitchen on Edgewood Road. I was standing over a skillet of pork chops, wondering if I put too much oil in the pan, while Emily was in the shower. I could hear the water running, the old pipes creaking like they always did. Steam wafted from the open bathroom door, carrying the sweet scent of her lilac soap into the kitchen. The smell mixed with the frying meat and onions, and the soft murmur of the evening news playing on the TV. For a moment, I thought, this is just another ordinary night. But then her phone buzzed on the counter. It sat there next to the salt shaker, face up in a scuffed faux leather case. At our age, most of the texts we get from the kids, doctors, or pharmacies. I figure it was our daughter from Des Moines or our son from Marion. The screen lit up reading, "I miss your smile." I wiped my hands on a dish towel and picked it up. The bathroom fan hummed. The shower water kept running, and steam drifted to the doorway like nothing was out of place. I opened the message. There was again, "I miss your smile," followed by a little heart. The name at the top said James J. Work. I'd met James once at a Christmas party at First River Credit Union, where Emily worked. He was younger than us, with a firm handshake, a big grin, and a haircut that probably cost more than mine. He called me sir and talked about interest rates like they were football scores. For a second, I tried to give a charitable spin. Maybe it was a joke, just office banter. Maybe I was overreacting. Then the phone buzzed again. "I can't stop thinking about last Friday in your car." Friday night. Emily told me she'd be staying late to wrap up some month-end reports. I had dinner by myself, leftover meatloaf, and then dozed off in my recliner with the Hallmark channel on. Now, my stomach dropped like a stone. My hands started shaking, not violently, but just enough to make it hard to focus, like when you try to thread a needle and realize you're not as steady as you used to be. I set the spatula down, careful not to splash hot oil. The first feeling that hit was sharp and painful. Then came the anger, rushing in right behind it. I could picture myself marching down the hall, bursting into the bathroom, and shoving the phone in her face while the water pounded down on both of us. But instead of that, something else took over. A cold, focused calm, like when I'm staring at a broken furnace in January. You can panic, or you can flip the switch to manual and fix the problem. I stood there, inhaling the mix of lilac and pork fat, wrestling with myself. "Don't do anything stupid, John," I told myself. "You don't know what you're walking into. You don't know what he'll do. You don't even know what you'll do." Another part of me argued back. "You've seen enough." My thumb hovered over the screen, and I read the last message again. "I can't stop thinking about last Friday in your car." Pretending to be her, I typed, "Come over. My husband isn't home today." I paused, my finger hovering over the send button. If I sent it, there was no turning back. If I didn't, I'd just be standing in the kitchen, pretending I hadn't seen what I'd seen. I pressed send. The message shot off into whatever hidden place holds secrets in Cedar Rapids. I set the phone back down, face down this time. The shower continued its steady run in the background. The furnace kicked on in the basement with a deep rumble. Grease popped in the pan, and a hot sting hit my wrist. For a moment, I just stood there, listening to my house, like it wasn't even mine anymore. The reply came too quickly. "How soon?" My throat went dry. I typed back, "Whenever. I'll be in the shower for a while." The little typing bubbles blinked in and out. Then give me 20. Another message popped up. I miss you. I nearly laughed. 20 minutes. That was all it took to show just how much respect this guy had for my marriage, and how much my wife had for it. I turned the burner down, covered the skillet, and set the fork aside. My hands were still shaking, but now it was from holding everything in. Every part of me wanted to scream, throw the phone in the sink, pound on the bathroom door, and demand answers with soap still in her hair. But I didn't. Instead, I walked to the living room, clicked off the TV, and stood at the front window, staring out at our quiet street. The winter sky above Cedar Rapids was dull and gray. A neighbor was unloading groceries from their truck. Everything looked the same, yet nothing did. The shower shut off. The pipes rattled. A moment later, I heard the bathroom door open, and Emily's bare feet patted softly on the hallway carpet. She hummed that little tune, the same one she always hummed when she felt good about herself. I used to love that sound. She walked into the kitchen in her robe, steam trailing behind her like a fog, and smiled as if nothing in the world was wrong. "Smells good," she said. "Is that the pork chops from Fairway?" "Yeah," I replied. My voice sounded normal, even though nothing about the situation was. "That scared me. Should be ready soon." She kissed my cheek quickly, automatically, and reached for her phone. I watched her face as the screen lit up. I saw the color drain from her cheeks, just a shade. Her eyes flickered up to mine, then quickly dropped back to phone. Her thumb started moving too fast, like she was trying to shove the truth back into the shadows by typing quickly enough. Before either of us could say anything, the doorbell rang. The sound hit me like a nail through my chest. Emily froze. Her fingers tightened around the phone. For a second, she looked like she might collapse right there on the linoleum. "I'll get it," I said. I wiped my hands on the dish towel again, even though they were dry, and walked down the hall toward the front door. My heart hammered in my chest, each beat hurting. I had no idea what I was going to say or do, but I knew I wasn't going to pretend none of this had happened. I gripped the door handle, took a breath, and opened the door to see who exactly thought it was okay to show up at my house on a Tuesday night, missing my wife's smile. Emily stood behind me in the hallway, frozen in her robe, water dripping onto the carpet. I could hear her breathing, short, shallow breaths, like someone trying not to choke. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. The only sound was a furnace humming behind us, and the faint squeal of tires as a car pulled away. I closed the door slowly, gently, not slamming it, just easing it closed until the latch clicked. That tiny sound felt louder than a gunshot. When I finally turned around, Emily took a step back, clutching her phone to her chest. "John," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What? What did you do?" I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to shout, to demand answers, to unload every ounce of hurt that was boiling up inside me. But another part of me refused to give her that power. I kept my voice steady, probably steadier than I felt. "I think you already know," I said. Her eyes shifted down, then toward the door, then back to me. "You don't understand," she stammered, shaking her head. It's not what—" "Emily," I said, holding up a hand. "Don't." She closed her mouth, snapping it shut as if the words themselves had slapped her. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The house felt too small for both of us, too filled with lies for me to breathe easily. She tightened the belt of her robe like she was cold, though the heat was running. I could feel it on my face. Finally, she spoke, her voice small. "Why would you text him? Why would you trick him like that?" I almost laughed. "Trick him, Emily? He thought you invited him." He didn't hesitate, not even for a second. Her face twisted with panic. "It's not like that. You're twisting it. We were just talking. It wasn't Emily." I said again, softer this time. "Stop lying. I saw the messages." She froze, her entire body going rigid, like her mind hit a wall and couldn't move. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. Not yet. She just looked at me, torn between guilt, fear, and something else, maybe calculation, like she was weighing which angle would save her. "John, I'm sorry," she whispered. Her apology floated in the air, too light to be real. Those words hurt more than the messages, I said. They came too fast, too easily. An apology should be heavy, should collapse under its own weight. Hers just hung there, weightless. I walked past her toward the kitchen. I didn't want to look at her, didn't want to breathe the same air. The pork chops were overcooked now, the edges curling up in the pan. I turned off the stove, lifted the skillet, and set it in the sink. Behind me, I could hear Emily standing in the doorway. "Can we just talk?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Please." "About what?" I asked, not turning around. "Which part? Friday? The text messages? How long's been going on?" She flinched, almost wincing. "John, I made a mistake." I finally turned to face her. "One message is a mistake," I said. "A whole conversation is a decision." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed, and for the first time that night, I let myself really see her. Damp hair, robe tied crooked, mascara smudged under one eye from the shower steam. She looked younger than usual, but not in a flattering way. More like someone caught in the middle of something they never expected to be held accountable for. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. "How far did it go?" I asked. She blinked quickly, once, twice. "John, how long?" I looked her in the eye. "Tell me the truth." For once, silence stretched between us like an endless road. She looked down at her hands, rubbing her thumb over the edge of her phone. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "A few months." I didn't answer. Couldn't. A few months. Not a slip-up, not a single night, not a misunderstanding. Months. I walked past her again, heading down the hall toward the living room. I needed space. I needed air that didn't taste like betrayal. She followed me, wrapping her arms around herself. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To sit down," I said. "To think." "About what?" I shot her a tired look. "About whether we've been married for 30 years, or whether I've just been keeping you comfortable while you tried something newer." She stopped in the hallway, her hand covering her mouth like the words physically hit her. For a second, I thought she might collapse. I sat down in the recliner, elbows on my knees, head in my hands. My heart thumped to my ears, heavy and uneven. I wasn't angry anymore. Not the loud, explosive kind of anger. Just hollow, like something inside me had been carved out. Emily stood in the doorway, staring at me. "John," she said, her voice cracking. "Please, say something. Yell at me if you have to. Just don't sit there like that." "I don't want to yell," I said. "I don't want to be like that. I just want the truth." "I told you the truth," she whispered. "No," I said, looking up at her. "You told me the minimum amount you thought might save you." She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again, but no words came out. She turned away, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. That night, she slept in the guest room. I could hear her crying behind the door, quiet but constant. And instead of comforting her, like I had for decades, I sat at our old desktop computer, opened a blank document, and began writing it all down, times, dates, details. Not because revenge was easy, but because I knew it was going to be hard. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages again. Little glowing pieces of life I didn't know my wife had been living. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I finally gave up pretending and sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of leftover coffee I'd reheated in the microwave. The house felt different now. Too quiet, like it was aware of itself, as if it knew something had cracked deep within its walls. By 7 o'clock, Emily left for work. She didn't say much. She lingered in the doorway for a moment, her purse hanging off her shoulder like it was too heavy. "Can we talk later?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe," I replied. And with that, she left. The door closed behind her, and the silence that followed felt final, like it had sealed something between us. I stared at the laptop she'd left in the living room. It wasn't locked. She'd never bothered. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to be the kind of man who dug through his wife's files like some paranoid teenager. But I wasn't going to bury my head in the sand either. I carried it to the kitchen table and opened it up. For a second, All I saw was her screensaver. Our kids at a lake in Wisconsin from 20 years ago. Two laughing teenagers who still believed their parents' marriage was something solid. I clicked into her Gmail. There they were, dozens of messages, some short, some long, some that looked innocent. But knowing what I now knew, each one felt like a knife. I started reading. Thanks for last night. I needed that. I can't stop thinking about you in that red sweater. You looked amazing. I wish you didn't have to go home so early. And then the one that made my breath catch. Someday we won't have to hide. Someday. My stomach twisted. I clicked on their shared Google Calendar next. Friday nights were marked as late shift closing report. Tuesday lunches were listed as team training. A few Saturdays were labeled errands, which now I could see were anything but. Each discovery hit like a punch. Each timestamp was a heartbeat saying, you weren't crazy. You weren't paranoid. You were right not to trust the silence. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, hurt and anger twisted together, but underneath them, something steadier started to form. A plan, cold, not impulsive, not out of rage, but clarity. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to throw her out. I wasn't going to make a stupid mistake in the heat of the moment that could get me arrested. I was going to make sure the truth came out in a way no one could twist or deny. But first, I needed advice. I drove downtown to see an attorney, Sarah Brooks, a divorce specialist with a small brick office near the Lynn County Courthouse. The receptionist, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a silver chain, gave me a sympathetic glance as she handed me a clipboard. Sarah herself was calm and direct. Take your time, she said. Tell me what you found. I told her everything. The messages, the shower, the doorbell, the look on Emily's face. Sarah listened without flinching, nodding slowly, like she'd heard versions of the story more times than she cared to admit. When I finished, she folded her hands in front of her. John, she said softly, I know you're hurting, but you're thinking clearly. That's good. You need to stay that way. I nodded. You need documentation, she continued. Screenshots, emails, dates. Anything that shows a pattern. Don't confront him again. Don't threaten anyone. Don't make a scene. Just collect the truth. That's it. Just collect? I asked. Just collect, she repeated. Then decide what you want your life to look like. Her words stayed with me the entire drive home. By the time I pulled into our driveway on Edgewood Road, an idea had formed. Something sharp but legal. Painful but honest. Not revenge for cruelty's sake. Revenge for clarity's sake. Emily's mother, Susan, was turning 70 in 2 weeks. Her birthday party would be at VFW Post 788. The whole family would be there. Some of Emily's co-workers, too. Their pastor, friend from church, people who'd known us for decades. Emily wanted everything to be perfect that night. All I intended to do was expose the truth that was already there. But even as the plan took shape in my mind, I felt a weight on my chest, like I was betraying something sacred just by considering it. Then I remembered the messages, the calendar entries, and the way Emily had lied to my face for months. If she was willing to risk our marriage in secret, then I had the right to end that secret. The next day, I gathered everything carefully. I didn't just print out screenshots. I organized them like I was preparing a professional report. Date at the top, context underneath, clean margins, straight cuts. My hands only shook once, and even then, I forced myself to steady them. Around midnight, I slid the final page into a plain manila folder. No labels, no decorations, simple and direct, just like the truth itself. But that didn't make it easy. I sat at the table, the folder in front of me, staring at it like it was a loaded weapon. Part of me wanted to hide it away, shove it in a drawer, burn it, pretend this wasn't happening, pretend the betrayal wasn't real. But the truth stayed heavy in my chest, and I couldn't ignore it. When Emily came home from work that night, she stood in the doorway like she was afraid to step into our own house. John, she said softly, can we talk? I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman I had built a life with, the woman who once squeezed my hand at our kids' school plays, the woman who, somewhere along the way, Forgot I was enough. Not yet, I said. For a moment, she looked relieved, like not yet meant maybe later. Maybe I'd forgive you. She didn't know what was sitting on the table between us. And she didn't know how close I was to throwing everything away, to letting her tears soften me, to letting myself believe we could patch over something this deep. But I didn't, because deep down I knew something. Starting over was going to be hard, but staying was going to be harder. I didn't expect the VFW hall to feel so small. On the drive over, I kept telling myself I was ready. The folder tucked under my arm, shirt ironed, breathing steady. But the second I stepped into the warm, noisy air of VFW Post 788, a wave of doubt hit me so hard I almost turned around and walked back to my truck. People were everywhere. Kids running between folding chairs, men in veteran caps standing around crock pots, women arranging plastic tablecloths and paper plates. Someone had set out a big cake with Happy 70th Susan written in pink frosting. This wasn't a faceless crowd. These were people who had known Emily and me for 30 years. People who sent us casseroles when our son broke his leg. People who hugged us at church. People who thought we were solid. And suddenly, I felt like an intruder in my own life. Emily saw me walk in and hesitated mid-step. Like her brain couldn't process me being there. Her smile flickered, polite but brittle. "John," she said, smoothing her dress. "You made it." "Yeah," I replied. Wouldn't miss Susan's big night. Her eyes briefly dropped to the manila folder. She blanched just a little, not enough for anyone else to notice, but I saw it. "John, maybe we should," she started. "Later," I said. "This is your mom's night. Let's not make a scene." It was the truth and also not the truth. I didn't come here to create chaos. I came here because chaos had already been living in my house for months, and it was time everyone saw it. But that didn't mean I wasn't scared. I stood at the edge of the room, watching people laugh and chat, paper cups filled with beer or weak punch. The fluorescent lights hummed. The American flag in the corner drooped over the wooden podium. The crock pot smelled like chili, smoked sausage, and old coffee burned in the bottom of a percolator. My palms were sweating. My heartbeat was rapid, tapping against my ribs in a fast, uneven rhythm. "What are you doing, John?" A voice whispered in my head. "This isn't you. You don't humiliate people. You don't drag private matters into public." Maybe it was right. Maybe I should have pulled Emily aside, handed her the folder, and left. No spectacle, no audience, just a clean break. Then I saw him, James Jensen, standing by the dessert table, dressed in a button-down shirt like he belonged there, laughing with Emily's cousin, eating cake. Not a single sign of shame on him. Something inside me solidified. He wasn't suffering. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't even nervous. He was comfortable. And in that moment, my fear turned into purpose. Not rage-driven purpose, but clear, focused purpose. Emily's mother, Susan, made her way to me, smiling wide in a bright blue blouse. She hugged me. "John, I'm so glad you're here," she said. I hugged her back. Wouldn't miss it. She smelled like lavender and the kind of drugstore lotion she'd used for as long as I could remember. The more I looked around, the clearer everything became. These people weren't strangers to the truth. They deserved to know it. Emily had woven them into a story that wasn't real, a story where she was faithful, a story where I was oblivious. If she didn't respect the life we built, the least I could do was respect the people in it by not letting them live in a lie. When dinner wound down, chatter softened. Coffee refills slowed. Paper plates started piling up near the trash cans. Someone's country playlist hummed beneath the noise. That was my moment. I walked toward the podium. My legs felt heavy, stiff. Halfway there, doubt hit me again, sharp and sudden. I wasn't a dramatic man. I didn't like attention. I didn't want pity or applause or whispering. I just wanted the truth. I tapped a spoon against a plastic cup. Ting, ting, ting. The room quieted. A few people turned in their seats, and some told their kids to sit down. Emily froze by the drink table. James set his fork down slowly, as if trying to sink into his chair. "Good evening, everyone," I said, clearing my throat. "I'll keep it brief." My voice wavered slightly on the first words, enough that I caught it, enough that I had to swallow before continuing. We're here tonight to celebrate Susan. 70 years. That's worth showing up for. People murmured in agreement. I looked at Susan, then back at the crowd. I also want to talk about honesty, the kind we owe to those who love us and trust us. My hands were shaking again, that familiar, fine tremor. I steadied the folder against the podium. Emily and I have been married 30 years, I said, and I thought I owed it to everyone here to share something I recently discovered. I opened the folder. Emily gasped. It wasn't loud, but in the quiet room, it cut through like a knife. I began reading the first message. I miss your smile. A ripple of whispers spread across the crowd. Emily stepped forward, her voice pleading. John, please don't. Please don't. I kept reading. I can't stop thinking about last Friday in your car. Someone whispered, Oh my God. I read the timestamps, the dates, the lunches, the Friday nights. I kept my voice steady, like I was explaining a broken furnace to a customer. James's face went ashen. He stood up abruptly, but before he could make a move, David from accounting, standing right behind him, put a firm hand on his shoulder. Sit down, David said, his voice quiet but firm. You need to hear this. Emily covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes full of tears. She hadn't cried when she needed to. I closed the folder. This isn't about revenge, I said, my voice cracking just a little. It's about clarity. If you want to know what happened in my marriage, now you do. And if you've ever wondered whether silence is easier than truth, take it from me, it isn't. The room was completely silent. I stepped away from the podium, grabbed the folder, and walked past the food table. Susan, bless her, reached out and touched my arm. Her eyes were red. John, she whispered, I'm so sorry. I leaned toward her, my voice softening. Happy birthday, Susan. I needed to do this before I could celebrate anything else. Then I walked out of the VFW hall into the cold Iowa night. My breath fogged the air, my hands still shaking, but for the first time in months, my heart felt steady. I sat in my truck outside the hall for a long time, with the engine off, watching my breath fog up the windshield. The lights from the building spilled across the snow-covered parking lot, flickering yellow, like the world inside was still vibrating from what had just happened. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They felt empty, like everything I'd been holding in for months had finally lifted, leaving behind a quiet that didn't hurt. I didn't go home that night. I didn't want to. The house felt contaminated, soaked through with a silence that pretends to be normal until you know what's underneath it. So I drove to Marion to my son Jake's place. He opened the door, wearing sweatpants and a Cedar Rapids Colonel's hoodie. Dad, he said, confused. It's late. I know, I replied. Can I stay a few days? He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. He just stepped aside and let me in. His basement became my room after that. An old sectional couch, the hum of a mini fridge, a lamp that flickered if you breathed on it wrong. I slept better there than I had in months. The next morning, everything felt different. Or maybe I did. I drove to Casey's for a cup of burnt coffee and one of those breakfast sandwiches that are always either too dry or too greasy. The clerk, a guy my age, nodded at me like he always did, unaware that my life had cracked open just 12 hours ago. I sat in my truck with the coffee, warm in my hands, and watched the sun slowly climb across the Cedar Rapids skyline. The snow on the curb turned gold. A school bus honked somewhere. Life kept moving. When I checked my phone, I saw 4 voicemails from Emily, all short. Please call me, John. Please. I'm so sorry. We can fix this. I listened to all of them, but I didn't call back. Around noon, she sent a long text. Apologies, explanations, promises. None of it changed what happened. I read it twice to be sure, then left it unanswered. That afternoon, I met with Sarah Brooks, the attorney. Her office smelled of old paper and lemon cleaner. You did what you needed to do, she said, sliding a stack of paperwork toward me. And now we deal with the rest. Divorce papers, asset list, next steps. None of it felt good, but none of it felt bad either. It just felt necessary. When I left for office, the wind off the Cedar River cut sharply across my face. I walked along the river path for a while, my hands buried deep in my jacket pockets, watching the geese glide by like they owned the place. I tried to figure out what I was feeling. It wasn't triumph. There's no victory in exposing something that should never have existed. It wasn't bitterness, either. I'd been too tired for bitterness for a long time. Mostly, though, it was relief. Relief that I wasn't crazy. Relief that my instincts had been right all along. Relief that I'd finally stopped pretending everything was fine. Starting over at 58 wasn't something I ever imagined. When you're younger, you think the big heartbreaks happen early. You don't picture yourself sitting in a basement at an age when your knees crack every time you stand up, wondering what comes next. But there I was, and strangely, it didn't scare me as much as I thought it would. A few days later, Emily and I met at a neutral spot, an old booth at the Village Inn on First Avenue. She cried before she even sat down. She reached for my hands. I kept mine folded in my lap. "I miss you," she said. "You miss what we used to be," I said softly. "Not what we are now." She cried harder. For years, I would have done anything to fix things for her. But sitting across from her that morning, with the smell of coffee and pancakes swirling around us, I realized something important. You can't fix trust by pretending the cracks don't exist. And I wasn't going to spend whatever years I had left pretending. When we stood up to leave, she hugged me. I let her, because 30 years of history don't just vanish overnight. But when she whispered, "John, please come home." Home. I stepped back. I don't think that's home anymore. She nodded through her tears. And that was the closest we'd get to closure. The days that followed were slow, but steady, quiet mornings with cheap coffee, walks by the river, long talks with Jake. I fixed a few things around his house, patched drywall, cooked dinner once or twice. I started feeling useful again. Some evenings I sat outside, watching the sky darken over the neighborhood, thinking about how strange life is, how it can fall apart and still keep going, how a man can lose everything he thought was solid and still breathe easier afterward. One night, Jake sat beside me on the back steps. "You doing okay, Dad?" he asked. "I've thought about it." "I'm getting there," I replied. He nodded. "That's enough." And he was right. No one bounces back overnight. Nobody heals on a schedule, but step by step, breath by breath. It does get easier. And maybe that's the point. If you're listening to this and something in my story resonates with you, let me tell you something I wish someone had told me. You're never too old to stand up for yourself. You're never too far gone to start over. And you're never as alone as you think. If my story spoke to you, if it reminded you of your own strength, if it helped you feel understood for even a moment, I hope you'll stick around. I share stories like this because people our age deserve to be heard too. If you want more stories of truth, second chances, and finding your way through life's tough moments, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Don't scroll past. Don't wait for later. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter, because someone's story might be the reminder you need tomorrow.